Joining me now is Joyce Vance. She's a former U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, and she's currently a visiting professor at the University of Alabama School of Law. Thank you for joining us. Let me start.
Thanks for having me.
Here, Ms. Vance, how much legal exposure does Donald Trump Jr. right now have, just based on what's out there?
So this is, I think, the first information that we've seen that would tie Trump more firmly to a potential conspiracy. But of course, conspiracies are only illegal if they have an illegal objective. So the question is, what would these direct messages tend to prove? Would it be hacking? Would it be receipt of stolen property? Could it possibly be a conspiracy to unlawfully involve a foreign government in a U.S. election? I think that those are the possibilities that are on the table, although I don't think that there's firm evidence based just on these DMs.
Can you prove that because there was publicly, the government went public with its accusation that WikiLeaks was an arm of the Russian government, that Donald Trump Jr. then should have known immediately that it was illegal, that it was potentially he was committing a crime in his back and forth with WikiLeaks?
I think you need a little bit more than just those two facts in conjunction. But the reality is that Trump Jr. was on Twitter where this information was being widely paraded. And what's a little bit tantalizing here, Chuck, is the fact that these direct messages, they're a little bit too casual, a little bit too direct to be a first contact. And you have to wonder what other source of communication there might have been between WikiLeaks and Trump Jr. I suspect that Bob Mueller's folks know a lot more than we do, and there is likely additional information that talks about the communication that Trump had that might do a better job of establishing his knowledge of WikiLeaks' status as a cutout for the Russians.
Does it matter if technically Donald Trump Jr., and I'm just talking about in a legal sense here, is not a paid member of the campaign, is simply a family member? Can he deny that he was somehow a part of the campaign and just claim that he was a private citizen here?
I don't think that really helps him from a legal point of view. If we're talking about a conspiracy to hack, a conspiracy to receive stolen emails, or some sort of foreign interference on a campaign, none of those sorts of crimes would really turn on his status as a member of the campaign.
You were careful to use the word conspiracy. That is got a legal definition. There's really no legal definition of collusion here, is there? We use the word a lot, but is there one that you could actually prosecute on?
There's no statute that says it's illegal to collude, but I think that as we all use that word collusion, we really are talking about a conspiracy, which is just essentially two or more people either implicitly or explicitly agreeing to accomplish an illegal goal and taking an overt step in that direction.
Well, then, based on what you just said, there's at least a circumstantial case that Donald Trump Jr. and Julian Assange were conspiring here?
There are a couple of details that you would need to lock down, right? Who really was on the other end of those DMs? Was it Assange or was it somebody else?
Does that matter?
You would need to nail. I think you would have to prove who he was conspiring with to make sure it was someone who was eligible. For instance, he couldn't conspire with an undercover agent working for the Bureau. So you would need to nail down details, but mostly his intent, his knowledge, his state of mind.
The idea that he was still exchanging direct messages with him into 2017 is clearly bad judgment. Is there legal exposure with that?
So bad judgment is never enough, but it might be enough to establish knowledge, or at least what prosecutors call willful blindness, which means you really knew the truth, but you were trying to pretend that you didn't. And at some point, people's efforts to distance themselves from what they know to be true become so patent that it's evidence of their knowledge and intent.
What do you feel like? What is this missing? I can tell you, the person that I am most intrigued by is whoever helped WikiLeaks curate the emails, because it clearly had to be somebody who was an American that understood each day what would hit, what would affect this media relationship and that. So that's always been a missing person that I'm curious about trying to figure out who that is. What's missing right now for you to understand this story better?
I think what's missing is what would have prompted Trump Jr. to engage in this kind of conversation. It's really interesting. Everybody knows in this sort of a campaign that the Russians they dangle, they seek to disrupt our elections and our way of life. And it was obvious that they would reach out to Trump, who is really just this candidate of chaos in this election sequence. So why doesn't Trump Jr. immediately go to law enforcement and say, listen, we're having this outreach and we know it's illegal? What led him to go forward? I think that we need to know more about that.
Is it possible that he didn't know? I mean, one of the theories out there is maybe he didn't appreciate what he was doing was, frankly, this illegal.
Right. We hear that argument that Trump was poorly served, candidate Trump was poorly served by not having professional campaign staff. And yet, during at least part of this conversation, Paul Manafort, who had experience, was on board. Other experienced people like Jeff Sessions, who testified today that he was pushing people away from Russian contact. They should have known.
All right, Joyce Vance, former U.S. Attorney in Alabama.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.